Somebody tell me where's the foul. There was two. Watch this. Hines Allen, hands straight up. There's three in a row. Raven Johnson, there's four fouls consecutively. And then watch Hines Allen. Just
Now, you guys remember when I first started the live, those of you guys who's been watching the live since the beginning, how I said it's two people at fault here? You guys remember when I said Stephanie?
Slow motion footage from a recent Indiana Fever game has reignited conversation about two separate but connected problems facing the team: questionable officiating against Caitlin Clark and a coaching strategy that many believe is making things worse. The footage, reviewed frame by frame, shows a stretch in which the Fever were hit with 6 consecutive fouls in a short window. Several of those calls have drawn serious scrutiny. Monique Billings was whistled after what appeared to be a single brief touch on the ball. Clark herself received her first foul of the game on a play where, if anything, she appeared to be on the receiving end of an elbow. The replays show no clear contact justifying the call. Hines Allen had her hands straight up. Raven Johnson delivered what looked like a clean block. The calls came one after another, and the cumulative effect visibly disrupted the Fever's momentum during what had been a promising stretch of play.
Remember when I said Stephanie White is at fault and the WNBA referees is at fault. Remember I said that when I first started the live. These fouls, right? Let me try to blow this up some. This is when, so Caitlin Clark got a foul in the first quarter. Let me rewind it back.
Boston
Hold on.
traveled. And then Caitlin Clark gets the offensive rebound, put back, splashes a jumper. Finds Kelsey
Caitlin.
What drew particular attention, though, was Clark's second foul of the game. That call, which came early in the first quarter, is widely considered the turning point. Anyone familiar with basketball understands what 2 fouls in the first quarter means for a star player. She gets pulled from the floor, her rhythm is broken, and the entire offensive structure shifts around her absence. The footage shows no clear foul on that play either, with the referee positioned directly in the line of sight of the contact, or lack thereof. Stephanie White did not challenge the call. She did not challenge Clark's second foul, nor her third, which also drew skepticism upon review. By the time Clark had accumulated 3 fouls, she was watching from the bench while the game drifted away. The one challenge White did use during the game was on an Aaliyah Boston foul, not on any of Clark's. Had the second foul been challenged successfully, many observers argue it would have slowed down the pattern of calls and kept Clark on the floor during a critical part of the game.
splashes a jumper. Finds Kelsey Mitchell.
Caitlin Clark get a foul like within the first crazy.
We're doing great.
Let's see.
Fast break offense. Caitlin Clark to Aaliyah Boston. I'm loving it. 8-2. Then they call 6 fouls in a row. Monique Billings. There was one. Look at this. She touches the ball for 1 second. Where's the foul?
Okay, here it comes, guys. Here it comes.
She got elbowed. There's Caitlin Clark's first foul.
Now, Caitlin Clark got a foul on this play, guys. Caitlin Clark received a foul on this play.
Meanwhile, Clark was getting hit on the other end with no whistle. In one sequence, she takes a clear elbow to the arm on a shooting motion. The referee is standing within direct eye line of the contact. No call is made. In slow motion, the hit is unmistakable. The broader context involves questions about the Fever's defensive scheme under White. Players were visibly hesitant to contest shots or play physical defense, seemingly aware that the officiating standard was inconsistent. Guards were being placed in the paint, trying to rebound and guard larger players, while post players like Aaliyah Boston the highest paid player in the league, were stationed out near the three-point line. Boston, the most expensive player on the roster at the time, appeared confused by her positioning on multiple occasions.
Clark's first foul.
Now, Caitlin Clark got a foul on this play, guys. Caitlin Clark received a foul on this play right here. This was Caitlin Clark's very first foul. So, this was Caitlin Clark's first foul of the game, guys. Watch this.
Somebody tell me
where was the foul? Watch this. Watch this. Boom. Boom. Where was Caitlin Clark? Where was the foul, bro? Boom. Boom. Because the ref is already going to call the
Monique Billings, earning a reported $800,000, contributed very little of note throughout. A guest analyst speaking on the situation noted that Clark's defensive numbers are frequently undervalued in these conversations, too. The idea that Clark cannot play defense, the analyst argued, does not hold up against the data. What she cannot do is play that defense effectively when she is constantly in foul trouble through questionable calls. The conversation also turned to Stephanie White's coaching record before the Fever. At Vanderbilt, White finished with an overall record of 46 wins and 83 losses, going 13-54 in SEC play with 0 tournament appearances. During her tenure, the program allowed 71, 79, and 70 points per game in 3 consecutive seasons. 9 players departed the program, several of them starters and key contributors.
Because the ref is already going to call the foul before. Let's see.
Somebody tell me where's the foul. There was 2. Watch this. Hines Allen, hands straight up. There's 3 in a row. Raven Johnson, there's 4 fouls consecutively. And then watch Hines Allen. Just standing there. 6 fouls in a row.
6.
Count them for me. Sophie Cunningham.
6 fouls in a row. Watch the clock, guys. Look at the time on the screen. Watch the time on the screen.
The parallel drawn was clear. Players who had prime years ahead of them decided those years were too valuable to spend in a system that wasn't working. White's approach to accountability in press conferences has also drawn criticism. Patterns going back before her time with the Fever show a tendency to use collective language, we, when addressing losses, rarely taking direct ownership of decisions, like rotation changes or failed challenges. When the team wins, the framing shifts to strategy and preparation. Good leadership, the analyst pointed out, does not work that way. The person at the front of the room is responsible for the outcome, and deflecting that responsibility onto the group damages trust and culture. The question many are now asking is what comes next. Some believe Clark will eventually need to do what other stars in similar situations have done: request a trade and find an environment where she can actually perform. The concern is not only about wins and losses, but about where.
6 fouls in a row. 6 fouls in a row.
Didn't touch her. 7 fouls in a row. Ty Harris just throws the ball out of bounds. She does not pass the ball. She shoots a three-pointer every time she touches it. I don't know about her yet. And then Michaela Timpson was a bright spot tonight. Huge block. Aaliyah Boston, the first half, her defender falls down. Just can't quite get it together. Caitlin Clark, second foul.
Clark is being fouled without calls, saddled with phantom fouls that take her off the floor, and operating in a system where her natural game is actively suppressed. The damage over a full season, physical and psychological, is not trivial. What the slow motion footage ultimately makes visible is something that has been building for a while. There are 2 distinct problems. One is a coaching staff that appears unable or unwilling to protect its best player through challenges, adjustments, or accountability. The other is an officiating pattern that, whether by design or systematic negligence, has consistently worked Clark at the worst moments. Together, the two problems compound each other, and the footage, frame by frame, makes that very difficult to look away from. The probability of Caitlin Clark finishing out her rookie contract with the Indiana Fever has dropped below 50%. A trade before that deal expires is now the more likely outcome. And while that claim may sound extreme, the circumstances behind it are hard to argue with.
Defender falls down, just can't quite get it together. Caitlin Clark, second foul.
Where was the foul? Look, guys, Caitlin Clark had 2 fouls in the first quarter. Look, pay attention to what we're painting here. Pay attention. Remember, when I first started this live, I stated it's Stephanie White and the refs. So, look, this was Caitlin Clark's second foul. She already had 2 fouls in the first quarter, guys. Caitlin Clark was already at 2 fouls in the first quarter. Already at 2. For that to kind of
The core issue is that the Fever were not rebuilt around Clark. When the front office assembled this roster, the blueprint was a team capable of competing under Stephanie White's preferred style, one that would function whether Clark was present or not. No meaningful effort was made to surround her with the specific personnel her game depends on. Floor spacers, cutters, rim protection, reliable defenders. What remains is a collection of serviceable players who are average across the board, with the notable exceptions of Clark and Kelsey Mitchell. The problem with that pairing is structural. Clark's value as a player has always been rooted in operating as the engine of an offense, setting the table, controlling pace, creating for others. Mitchell is a scorer by nature, someone whose best basketball happens off the ball. Under White's system, both players are being forced into secondary roles simultaneously, which means two genuinely talented players are each performing below their ceiling while competing for the same limited opportunities.
he had 2 fouls in the first quarter. Already at 2. For that to kind of take this down in a minute because it's going to get copyrighted, guys. So this was Caitlin Clark's second foul. Watch it.
Get it together. Caitlin
Where was the foul?
Clark, second.
Where was the foul? Look at the ref right here. Bottom left screen. Bottom left screen here. Bottom left screen. Where was the foul? You seeing? Are you guys seeing this? Are you guys seeing what I'm showing you?
The shots are not good. The rhythm is not there. White's approach appears built on the assumption that Clark can be reshaped, that her tendencies as a ball-dominant playmaker can be dialed back and redistributed. The result has been an overcorrection. Clark, without the ball in her hands, becomes entirely dependent on whether her shots fall. On nights when she is locked in and shooting well, the team looks functional. On nights when she is not, there is no alternative pathway to production because the system has removed the other tools she uses to affect games. The fit between Clark and White appears irreparably broken.
You don't have runners around her. You don't have shooters. You don't have rim protectors. You don't have stoppers. You've got a whole bunch of mediocre players who are mediocre at every single aspect of basketball, other than Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell, who are now doing the same thing. Instead of Caitlin Clark being the point guard and being the orchestrator of everything and basically setting everything up for Kelsey Mitchell, it is now a contest between Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell to see who can put up the most bullshit.
White runs a scheme that demands physical defenders at every position. Clark is a capable perimeter defender on her better nights, perhaps a 6 out of 10. But the guards around her are worse, which means opponents simply attack that side of the floor. The defensive liability is real. More damaging still, is that the only moments Clark has looked like herself offensively this season have come when she has effectively ignored the system and played her own game. White's reaction in those moments has been visibly unhappy. That dynamic is not sustainable. The financial picture makes things worse. The Fever are locked into significant salary commitments, a supermax deal for Aaliyah Boston, plus contracts for Lexi Hull and Monica Billings that are difficult to move.
A contest between Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell to see who can put up the most bullshit when they're off the ball. Who can put up the most bullshit when they're off the ball? Because Caitlin Clark off the ball is trying to force rhythm, and obviously, Kelsey Mitchell is Kelsey Mitchell. She's a gunner. So now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you literally have two players fighting for the same shots, both playing their B game, by the way. Kelsey Mitchell's a better off-the-ball player than on-the-ball player. You've got two players.
The question of whether the organization can even offer Clark the extended contract she would be eligible for is genuinely uncertain. Meanwhile, attendance has been declining. When a team is selling thousands of seats below capacity, the arena itself may be operating at a net loss. The economic case for keeping Clark, which once rested on jersey sales, gate revenue, and broader league visibility, has weakened considerably. Jersey revenue is distributed across the league, not kept by the Fever. The local financial benefit of Clark's presence is no longer what it was. The two paths available to the organization are clear and mutually exclusive. The first is a full rebuild around Clark. Remove the coaching staff, replace most of the roster, except that it will take 2 or 3 years to construct something properly suited to her strengths.
B game, by the way. Kelsey Mitchell's a better off-the-ball player than on-the-ball player. You've got two players playing their B game, and your team doesn't get good shots. Your team doesn't get good shots. It's not going to work because Stephanie White has a way she wants her team to play. That whole thing is under her assumption that she's going to change Caitlin Clark. And Stephanie White, from the second she set foot in the Fever, did not like Caitlin Clark, the player. She said, okay, Caitlin Clark's easy to game plan again.
The difficulty is that by the time such a rebuild reaches maturity, Clark would be approaching the end of her deal with every reason to leave. The window would be narrow and the margin for error essentially zero. The second path is a trade. Moving Clark now would allow the front office to provide White with the kind of...
Again, so my job is to make it harder to game plan against her. And I'm like, okay. But instead, she's overcorrected now, and Caitlin Clark is no longer has the ball in her hand. And now, as I've said from preseason, Caitlin Clark's impact comes down to makes or misses. And she's had some unbelievable games this season. Why? Because she's had some games this season where she just can't miss. She's had some games this season where she has looked absolutely exceptional scoring-wise, where she looks...
Chicago remains a theoretical option, despite the contract matching challenges. Toronto has also been mentioned. What all of these scenarios have in common is that the return value has dropped considerably from what it would have fetched 6 months ago. Other front offices are aware of the Fever's situation and are pricing accordingly. What makes the whole thing genuinely strange is that firing White would not fix the problem. The roster, as constructed, is not built for anyone but her. The players currently under contract are best suited to exactly the kind of system she runs. The problem is not the coach in isolation, and it is not the player in isolation. It is that these two things were placed together without any apparent consideration of whether they could coexist.
Exceptional scoring-wise, where she looks like she can't miss, where she goes through spells in games where she is on fire, and she's been an unbelievable scorer at times. The problem is that There were games back in the day when Caitlin Clark would not score and she played well. That is not possible right now in Steph's system. And like, I mean this. We have now got a situation where you have to make a choice if you're the Fever. Got a situation where you have to make a choice if you're the Fever. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The earlier you make the choice, you can salvage this season. There's a potential. You can salvage this season in two ways. You have two ways to salvage this season. You can salvage the season by trading Caitlin Clark or by getting rid of every single thing. If you don't trade Caitlin Clark, let's be real. Even if Stephanie White is gone, you appoint the greatest coach in the world. This team's not equipped to win. They're just not. To win, like you have, if you don't trade Caitlin, to win, like you have, if you don't trade Caitlin Clark, you would have to literally, this is what you would have to give up. You would have to give up the entire coaching staff. You'd have to get rid of them all because they're a package deal. Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf are a package deal. Again, outside of Amber, every single person I mentioned involved with the Indiana Fever last winning a championship. Lynn Dunn, you just keep Lynn Dunn, because why not? You would have to get rid of Lynn Dunn, you just keep Lynn Dunn, because why not? You would have to get rid of Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull. Maybe you keep Sophie. You have to get rid of one of Sophie or Lexi Hull. Lexi's on a near untradeable contract, and you have to get rid of Monique Billings. You have to potentially give up assets to get rid of them. You have to find a way to get off Kelsey Mitchell, because they're not going to work. It is one of these weird things where if you have to start from scratch. If you want to build through Caitlin, you have to start from scratch and realize that you fucked up bad. You fucked up bad, and that every decision has been made since